Welcome to Muscles and Magic the Gathering, and today we're diving right in. You are here because you love Lord of the Rings and you love Magic the Gathering. You are just like me. Literally, Lord of the Rings and Magic the Gathering are two of my favorite things on the planet of Earth. They're two things that I've been invested in for over 30 plus years. And I remember the day that Magic the Gathering announced they were doing a Lord of the Rings Universes Beyond set. I was beyond excited. Literally, I could count that as one of the best days of my life because my two passions, my two loves, they were coming together. Now, normally, if you're used to tuning into my videos, you're used to deck tech, you're used to strategies, you're used to synergies, you're used to seeing cards that you need 100% to put in your deck, whatever deck I'm showcasing, right? But today, we're going to do things a little bit different. This deck is all about my love, my celebration of Magic the Gathering and Lord of the Rings. So a bit of background on how this kind of came together. When the Lord of the Rings set came out, I literally bought every single product. These were the first decks, the first Precon decks that I actually purchased and that I actually upgraded. I've always built decks from scratch, but I had to have the Lord of the Rings Precon decks. So I had these 4 Lord of the Rings Precon decks, right? And I wanted to upgrade them because I bought a lot of Lord of the Rings product, right? I want to say I bought 30 collector's boxes. It might have been 25. It might have been as high as 40, but I bought a lot of them. I bought a lot of the set boosters. I bought a lot of just everything, right? The bundles, like the whole thing. I actually wish I bought more. Anyway, I had a bunch of extra cards that I wanted to showcase. And so I wanted to upgrade these Precons. I wanted to stick certain cards in. And that's what this video is about. What did I add to my Frodo and Sam deck to A, make it a little better, but B, and mostly to add to the collectible value. Now, the original deck, I've got it pulled up on Moxfield right now. The original deck, it's got about $54 in value in it. My deck, I did significant upgrades to it because I wanted to feature my collection. My deck now stands at a whopping $1,184. So I did $1,000 of upgrades to this deck. A lot of that is in a few certain cards, which you will see. So I will keep you in suspense for that. But I did a lot of upgrading this deck. But again, I didn't upgrade it with the intention of just making it better. The rule that I had to follow is they actually had to be Lord of the Rings cards. They had to have the Lord of the Rings symbol. If I was going to upgrade this a different way, I could have gone all kinds of different directions, all right? Especially with the food mechanic, if you will, or the life gain mechanic. I would have loved to put an Etherflux Reservoir in this deck, but I didn't, because I didn't have one that was printed from the actual Lord of the Rings set. So with all that said, let's get down to business talking about this deck. As you can tell, I'm excited. I'm probably all over the place. This might be the worst show in the history of Muscles and Magic the Gathering. It might be the best. It might be the most entertaining, but I am thrilled to talk about this, all right? And by the way, I have 4 of these decks that I have upgraded. So today we're talking about the Frodo and Sam deck. So first of all, let's talk about the commanders. We've got Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit. Partners with Sam, Loyal Attendant. Vigilance, whenever Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit attacks, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. You know I love some card draw in Commander. And then we got Sam, Loyal Attendant, partners with Frodo, obviously. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a food token. Activated abilities of foods you control cost 1 less to activate. So these are my commanders. I didn't change commanders. I didn't want to radically alter the Precon. But now let's talk about what I actually added to the deck. Actually, we're going to keep you in suspense. We're going to do that at the end. Let's go over what was in this Precon, all right? First one, Farmer Cotton. When Farmer Cotton enters the battlefield, create X 1/1 white halfling creature tokens and X food tokens. Tireless Provisioner, Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token or a treasure token. Rapacious Guest, Menace. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a food token. There's that token mechanism again. Whenever you sacrifice a food, put a 1/1 counter on Rapacious Guest. When Rapacious Guest leaves the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to its power. The Gilded Goose. When Gilded Goose enters the battlefield, create a food token. Then you can create another food token by paying some mana and tapping it. And if you sacrifice food, add 1 mana of any color. The Birds of Paradise, the greatest mana dork of all time. Don't at me with your opinion on this. It is literally the greatest mana dork of all time. Feasting Hobbit, Devour Food 3. Creatures with power less than Feasting Hobbit's power can't block it. Gwahir, Greatest of Eagles. And I think I actually upgraded this card to the art version of that. I did that a lot in this deck. Flying, and whenever Gwahir attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until the end of turn. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, which usually happens with this deck, create a 3/3 white bird creature token with flying, and whenever this creature attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until the end of turn. We have the Mirkwood Bats. I upgraded that card. Now, the Mirkwood Bats was included in this deck, but I just put a fancier version of it. When you're making tokens, let me tell you something. Mirkwood Bats is one of the greatest cards Magic the Gathering has ever created. When you're sacrificing tokens, it's one of the best cards Magic the Gathering has ever created. There's like cards that go in almost every commander deck I build. And every commander deck I build that involves tokens, whether it's my Corvold Treasure deck, you know, whether it's my vampire deck, whether it's my zombie deck, you know the Mirkwood Bats is in there. For a common, I think it's, I'm going to go on record and say it's the greatest common of all time. Treebeard, Gracious Host, Trample, Ward 2. When he enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens. Whenever you gain life, put that many 1/1 counters on target halfling or treefolk. Pippin, Warden of Isengard, kind of like a backup commander, if you will, all right? Partner with Mary, Warden of Isengard, create a food token. If you tap it for 1, and then sacrifice food tokens, other creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain haste until the end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. Then we have Mary, Warden of Isengard, partner with Pippin, Warden of Isengard. Whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. This ability triggers only once each turn. Sometimes if I want a bit different flavor of the game, I'll put in what I call the secret commanders or the backup commanders. I love that Magic does this with their precons. It just adds a little extra flavor. We have the Gaffer, great card. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, draw a card, super useful. Actually, in my Sorin House of Markov deck, I use this card. Generous Ent. When Generous Ent enters the battlefield, create a food token. Essence Warden, another creature enters the battlefield, gain a life. The Woodfall Primus. When Woodfall Primus enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent, and it's got Persist on it. And then the Great Oak Guardian. Flash, Reach. When it enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls gets +2/+2 until the end of the turn and untap them. So those are the creatures that were included in this deck. I was going to move on to sorceries, but I'm actually going to talk about the creatures because I know you can't wait that I actually put in this deck extra. I honestly don't remember what I took out. I'm sure you could figure it out. If you look up the original deck list on the internet, I'm sure you can figure out what I took out. I honestly don't remember. It's been so long. But here's what I added. Gandalf the White, beautiful printing of this card. Flash, you may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. If a legendary permanent or artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a trigger ability of a permanent to control the trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Soul's Attendant. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may gain 1 life. This adds directly into that life gain flavor of this deck. Frodo Baggins, it's a nice surge foil. Whenever Frodo Baggins or another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, the ring tempts you. As long as Frodo's your ring bearer, it must be blocked if able. Old Man Willow, there's a lot of Treefolk in this deck out of the box, so I had to add some extra Treefolk. His power and toughness are equal to each number of lands that you control. And whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or token. When you do, target creature an opponent controls gets -2 until the end of turn. Remember I was talking about Treefolk? Fangorn, Tree, Shepherd. Treefolk, you control at Vigilance. Whenever 1 or more Treefolk you control attack at twice that much green mana, you don't lose unspent green mana as steps and phases ended. Bilbo, Birthday Celebrant. Love this card, and I added a fancy version. I actually think this was included in the original version of this deck. Like I said, I honestly can't remember. If you would gain life, You gain life, that much life +1 instead. And if you exile it by paying some mana, search your library for any number of creature cards, put them onto the battlefield, and shuffle. Activate only if you have 111 or more life. It's kind of a really cool way to win. Stone Hewer Giant Vigilant. Search your library for an equipment card, put it onto the battlefield, attach it to a creature you control, then shuffle. Treebeard, Eldest of Ents, in a beautiful printing of this card. Each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Timber Protector. Other Treefolk creatures you control get +1/+1. Other Treefolk and forests you have, they get indestructible. So kind of like a creature anthem for the Treefolk. I kind of actually made this deck low-key a Treefolk deck. Whenever Quick Beam, Upstart Ent, or another Treefolk enters the battlefield under your control, up to 2 target creatures get +2/+2 and gain trample till the end of turn. We have the Delighted Halfling, another incredible mana dork, all right? You know what that card does. You add 1 colorless mana, or you add 1 mana of any color, and you can only spend it to use a legendary spell. It can't be countered. This here is one of the best white and black cards of all time. Wasso Corrupt Sheriff. If I build a white and black deck, I will put this in. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. I promise you, if you can get this out on turn 2, it is always worth it to trade a life for a treasure token. Always. So put that in your black and white deck. Samwise. All right. Whenever another non-creature token enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token. Create 3 foods. Return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. That comes in really, really handy. Orcish Bowmaster is a beautiful foil version of this card. This card is absolutely incredible. You're building a black deck. It has to have Orcish Bowmasters in it. So you know this card had to make an appearance. And then we have another Frodo Determined Hero. When enters the battlefield or attacks, you can attach target equipment you control with mana value 2 or 3 to Frodo. As long as it's your turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to Frodo. So I kind of bumped up this deck using some Frodo cards, some Sam cards. I had to have Gandalf in here because he's, Frodo's best friend, essentially, and a bunch of Treefolk. So those were the creatures. All right, now let's move on to sorceries. These were the sorceries that were in the deck. Fumigate, Toxic Deluge, one of my favorite cards of all time. Anguish Unmaking, incredible removal card. Cultivate, Harmonize, Night's Whisper, Farseek, Go for the Throat, another great removal. Path to Exile, and Swords to Plowshares. And here's an example of where I could have made this deck better, but I didn't. Like, Deadly Rollick would be a better include than a Go for the Throat. Like, there's no one on the planet that would argue that. But I didn't have any Deadly Rollick cards from the Lord of the Rings set, so I tried to keep this pure, and I will do that with my decks sometimes. Like, my big thing is collecting. Currently, as it stands right now, as I film this video, and I don't always release these in order. Like, I kind of go by feeling and what I want to see that week, right? I've got a bunch of these in the bank, but I build decks for collecting. I build decks out of the love of the game, love of the sets, the love of the lore. And so, yeah, sometimes I will keep a deck pure. Like, I want to build a deck with, like, I don't know what the example is, but maybe only people that were on the Weatherlight. Maybe it's only, pictures of creatures that are actually holding a weapon, something like that. Like, I will build theme decks like that. I've got a bunch of theme decks. Anyway, I'm doing this for my love of Magic the Gathering. And that's one of my arguments that I've always used on unbanning all the cards. I've got 55 total Commander decks right now. And the more cards that are banned, the harder it is to find variety. And I really like variety. I want to literally showcase all the cards in my collection. But all that said, what instants and sorceries have I added to the mix? Well, you knew this one was coming. Last March of the Ents. This was a tough include. I actually needed this for some other decks that I have. I have a Selvala Heart of the Wilds, like Brainstorm style deck, that I wanted to include this in there. I don't have it because I didn't have any left. I need to buy one. I'm actually going to put that on my list to buy. If you go look at that, it's probably going to be added in about 2 minutes. But this had to go in here because there are lots of Treefolk. This spell can't be countered. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. We have Tempt with Discovery. And we also have Shadow of the Enemy. So those were the 3 sorceries and instants that I added. Now let's talk about enchantments, all right? We have of herbs and stewed rabbit. This was actually included in the original Precon. We have assemble the Entmoot. Creatures you control have reach. Sacrifice, assemble the Entmoot. Create 3 tapped XX green Treefolk creature tokens, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Put a reach counter on each of them. And then we have Sanguine Bond, all right? Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Do you know how badly I wanted to put an Exquisite Blood in this deck? I wish I would have printed one in the Lord of the Rings set. Actually, I don't know if they did. I don't think they did. With the amount of product that I bought, I would have gotten one. So I'm just going to go on the safe side and say they did not print it. But I would love an Exquisite Blood in the set. But again, doesn't have the Lord of the Rings symbol. Can't do it. Now, what enchantments did I add? Elven Course. Love this card. When you may look at the top card of your library at any time, you can cast creature spells from the top of your library, and creatures I control all have add a mana of any color, so it basically turns any, creature into a non-flying Birds of Paradise. Call of the Ring, beautiful surge foil of this. At the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. Whenever you choose a creature as a ring bearer, you may pay 2 life if you do draw a card. Flowering of the White Tree. Legendary creatures you control get +2 and +1 and have ward 1. Non-legendaries get +1/+1. And then we have Dawn of the New Age, kind of an underrated card in my opinion. It enters the battlefield with a hope counter for each creature you control. At the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from the Dawn of the New Age. If you do draw a card, then if Dawn of the New Age has no hope counters on it, sacrifice it, you gain 4 life. So card draw, I've said this before, I'll say it again, card draw in a game of Commander is absolutely everything. And so that card actually works really, really well. And as I read this through, I'm realizing this is even more underrated than I thought it was. I need to include this in more decks, and I probably got 30 of these laying around. So I got to use them. I got a lot of Lord of the Rings cards. Now let's talk about artifacts. Arcane Signet. I'm not taking that out of the deck. That's useful in any Commander deck ever. And then we have Chromatic Lantern. Lands you control have add 1 mana of any color. I really, really like those cards. Mana ramp is important too. Like when you're looking at building a good Commander deck, there's 3 areas that I want to focus on. Tutors, mana ramp, and card draw. Those are the 3. Sometimes I say them in different order, but those are the 3. And by the way, as I talk about upgrading this deck, you might be thinking like, Bobby, where's your Sylvan Library? Because there was a Sylvan Library in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I didn't have an extra one. I used it in another deck. You will see in a lot of my decks, if you watch these videos, there's a lot of Lord of the Rings decks. I try to put a Lord of the Rings card in like almost every deck because I love it so much. But yeah, just hear me out. There's no Balanced Tomb in this either. At least I don't think I put one in. I would love to, but I used my Balanced Tombs, the Ancient Tomb, and all kinds of other decks. So now let's look at the artifacts I added. All right, we added Sting, the Glinting Dagger. Equipped creature has +1/+1 and has haste at the beginning of each combat. Untapped creature. Equipped creature has first strike as long as it's blocking or blocked by a goblin or orc. We have the Morgul Knife. Shadow Spear, love this card. I've actually got a Surge Foil version of this somewhere. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. Permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. We added Bilbo's Ring, legendary piece of equipment. As long as it's your turn, equipped creature has hexproof and can't be blocked. Whenever equipped creature attacks alone, you draw a card and you lose a life. Equip Halfling 1, equip 4. Mithril Coat. Look at that beautiful print in a Mithril Coat. I think this is one of the best Commander protection kind of pieces of equipment ever. Flash, indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, you attach it to a target legendary creature you control. Equipped creature has indestructible. We added Anduril, Flame of the West. Equipped creature gets +3/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, create 2 tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. If that creature is legendary, instead create 2 of those tokens that are tapped and attacking. All right, look at this. We have the party tree. Actually, before I show you the party tree, let's show you something. You see all these pieces of equipment? That is why, if you're curious, I added the Stone Hero Giant. If you were watching this earlier and you're like, Bobby, this is about hobbits, this is about treefolk, why would you add this? Well, I added a bunch of equipment. So that is why that card went in there. Just so you know, I put a bit of thought into this. I mean, even though it was just about collecting, I tried to make it as good as possible, to be honest with you. All right. So now the party tree, the Great Hinge. Love this card. The spell costs X less to cast. where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You add 2 mana, you gain 2 life if you tap it, and whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. We have Elisar the Elfstone, all right? Whenever a non-artifact permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you may return another permanent you control that shows a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. And I just realized I don't think I have a Rosie of Cotton Lane in here. And because that works so well with counters, I need to put one in. So remind me of that in the comments. Rosie of Cotton Lane. If you put it in the comments, I will remember. We'll also preview watch this video. Elisar the Elfstone. Cloudstone Curio. Whenever a non-artifact permanent enters the battlefield, you may return another permanent you control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. The Bridge of Khazad-dûm, Ensnaring Bridge. Creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand cannot attack. Doesn't really work 100% well all the time with Treefolk, but I thought it was a beautiful card and I put it in here. And the truth is I don't have to play it, but it needed to go in here. Maybe actually now that I think about that, I will use that in another deck and I'll put Rosie of Cotton Lane in here. Maybe that's a change that I'll make. So I'm actually just going to put this aside because I might do that. The One Ring, you know, the One Ring had to absolutely go in here. Indestructible, and when the One Ring enters the battlefield, when you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Put a burden counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. I think this is one of the most powerful game changers of all time, and I absolutely love that card. So you know it had to go in here, and I have a bunch of these. And look at that. The highlight of this deck, I told you there was a really expensive card, and we have a beautiful Soul Ring here. So that had to go in this deck. I would have loved to use it for other decks, but it had to go in this one. Let's talk about lands now. Just some basics, right? I just put some pretty versions of them in here because I love these foil lands. I try to put these in every deck that I have as well. All right, and now let's talk about the lands that were included in this Precon. We have Command Tower, Path of Ancestry, Murmuring Bosk, Access Tunnel, Scoured Barrens, Rogue's Passage, Shine Shadow Snarl, Sandstep Citadel, Necroblossom Snarl, Isolated Chapel. We got the Brushland, love those. Exotic Orchard, Canopy Vista, Sun Petal Grove, Ghost Quarter, Woodland Cemetery. Would I like some better lands? Yes, but again, Lord of the Rings featured, so that's all we could use. Now let's talk about the lands I added, all right? We added Castle Ardenvale, so Metacelled Golden Hall of Edoras. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a plains. If you tap it, you get a plains. And then for 2 and 2 white, you create a 1/1 white human creature token. Love that this deck creates a lot of tokens. Inn of the Prancing Pony, a.k.a. Pillar of the Peroons. Bag in. Horizon Canopy, pay 1 life, and you add greener plains. And then if you sacrifice, you draw a card. Love card draw. Barrow Downs and a nice Surge Foil version of this, all right? Bajuka Bog, a little graveyard hit for people. The Shire, how could they not include the Shire here? The Shire had to go in. I added that. Caracas, banned card, but I play with banned cards. I told you I have 55 decks. It's almost impossible to get the kind of variety I'm looking for without banned cards. So they are going in. And I also want to talk a little bit about banned cards. And this is my philosophy, right? This card is banned, but like Rhystic Study is allowed. This card is banned, but Smothering Tithe is allowed. This card is banned, but somebody can play with the Thoracle combo. And my whole point to that, and I get I'm comparing, like in the case of Thassa's Oracle, I'm comparing a creature to a land. But like, you can't tell me that this card is unfun, but like a Thassa's Oracle is okay. So I play with banned cards, and I want the variety, and it went in this deck. Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature. You can add a mana, and then draw a card. Activate only if you attack 2 or more creatures this turn. Myriad Landscape. All right, great card. We're getting some basic lands. And look at these two. The Valley of Gorgoroth, the Wasteland. Love this card to get rid of people's lands. And the Dead Marshes. This absolutely had to go in there. Whenever I have a deck that's got like 3 or more mana bases, I try to include something like the Dead Marshes to help with some mana fixing. So those are my lands. And that brings us to the conclusion of this deck. It's pretty awesome, I gotta say. And now that we're doing this, let's look up here. I've collected all my boxes, all right? And I've got like 5 of these that are filled with cards, but I do need to look for a Rosie of Cotton Lane. We'll see if we can actually find one, because I'm going to take out the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. I actually have a really fun deck with Grand Arbiter Augustin that I can put that in, that I can use. That's got a bunch of small creatures in it that would actually really, really work well in. I was thinking about ordering another one, but I'm not going to need to, because I actually think Rosie of Cotton Lane would go really well in this deck. And watch me not be able to find one now. But this is my Lord of the Rings Frodo and Sam deck. It's got some food flavor in it. It's got some Treebeard flavor in it. Some Treefolk, if you will. And I absolutely just love building decks. Now, the original deck, because it was a Precon, was probably, by the way, some of you that were asking what food does, this is what it does. The original Precon was probably a bracket 2 deck. This has been upgraded to a bracket 3. It's got 2 game changers in it. We have the Orcish Bowmasters and the One Ring. It's got a couple of tutor cards in it, although I don't know if I would necessarily count them as tutors. The Bilbo card, it's not a tutor like a Demonic Tutor is, right? Because the Bilbo card, you got to get 111 life to be able to make use of it. I cannot believe, we found it. We found it. We're going to make the substitution right now on this channel. So thank you very much for being patient. But I don't think all tutors are created instant. Like, for example, with the Bilbo one, I got to get 111 life to make that tutor work. And then with the Stonehewer Giant, I need just tutors for equipment, right? So it's not a tutor on the level of Demonic Tutor or Vampiric Tutor. I wish I put tutors in different categories, but this is a bracket 3 upgraded. If I needed to, if someone really, really had an issue with it, I could take out the Caracas. That's really the only banned card that I have. But now that we have we found this card, we got to talk about it. When Rosie of Cotton South Lane enters the battlefield, create a food token. Whenever you create a token, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. So that adds to that counter sub-theme in this deck and the token theme in this deck. So it really, really, really helps. This actually makes a really cool infinite combo, by the way, with a card called Scurry Oak, and a really cool infinite combo with Herd Baleth. So just so you know. So what we're going to do here live, and this actually gives me a point to talk about this. We're going to take out the ensnaring bridge, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. Let's see if I can find that now. It is an artifact. So we're going to take out that card. It's a $12 card, and we're going to actually put this aside because I'm going to use it as another deck. And we are going to pop in Rosie Cotton of South Lane. And honestly, this is kind of what I do. Like, one of the things that I love that this kind of happened organically, this was not planned, is that I was able to change my deck. This is one of my favorite things in the world, looking through my decks. And that's a beautiful printing of that card and making updates to it and stuff. So the other thing I want to let you know is by the time you watch this video, I may have changed his deck, like literally. I'm always tinkering, and if I came across a certain card in Lord of the Rings, I would add it to this deck. So the deck list is going to be in the show notes, but look at it, and if you notice some changes, you're like, hey, that wasn't in the video. It's because I went ahead and make the change. This is my favorite thing to do when I'm not fighting, when I'm not doing jiu-jitsu, when I'm not working out. I am constantly upgrading and tinkering my decks. Like the 55 decks I have now, they will never, ever, 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 ever be finished. And my goal is to have 100, right? So let's go down. One more thing I got to talk about. The total mana value of this deck is 207. I would like to get that under 200, but with some of those big tree folk, it was a little harder to do. And again, I wasn't obsessed with making this necessarily the most competitive deck. You've heard me talk about this before on my channel. For a card to be, for a deck to be ultra competitive, I think the mana value has to be under 200 unless you're doing some additional things to it. So I try to keep it under 200, but 207 is pretty close. It's not bad at all. I'm pretty happy with it. This is a beautiful deck to showcase my collection. Sam, Frodo, and listen, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, two things. One, thank you for coming by and sharing my passions with me. This means the world to me. This is, out of all the content that I've ever created, this Magic the Gathering content is my absolute favorite to do. But number two, again, I'm always upgrading my decks, and it's a huge passion of mine. If you have ideas for this deck, keep in mind the cards had to have been included in the Lord of the Rings set. Please put them in the comments below, because I will upgrade my decks and I will make some changes. So, love you. Thank you for spending some time with me. And thank you for coming to Muscles, Bobby Maximus, and Magic the Gathering. These cards, it's been a blast.